Yeah, you look great.
Tell? Okay.
Yes,
That was the
absolutely.
right answer. Thank you.
Yeah. So we're joined today by Vital Vegas, and the gentleman that runs the account. His name is Scott, and would love to hear more about you, how you came to having such a big Twitter account and such a big blog.
Yes, well, thank you for having me on. Yeah, so I moved to Vegas about 20 years ago, and I worked for a couple of companies here in town doing marketing and copyright and other things. Eventually, I started working for Caesars Entertainment. I did a blog for them that lasted about 3 years, and they didn't care for it because it was, it was only making a couple $1 million a year for them. So we parted ways, and I started Vital Vegas. And I've had day jobs for quite a while, but this was kind of my hobby until 3 years ago. And Casino.org saw value in it, so now it's my full time job. And the blog is on Casino.org, but I do what I've always done, which is be snarky, and my contacts have gotten pretty good. So pretty much, if there's a story in Vegas, I break it first, and then the local papers and local media confirm it, and then that's how it goes.
I was looking
But
through your feed today, and I noticed one of the local papers didn't give you credit for something that you broke, and I noticed that that particular paper. I won't say their name because I don't want to get in any trouble or anything, but
I'll
they,
say it, Las Vegas Review
yeah,
Journal.
that's the
That
one.
was me.
Okay, yeah. I noticed those guys were very pro Oakland Athletics as all this news has been coming out about the possible move to Las Vegas. And it seemed as if maybe they were giving the direct feed almost like paid promotion. And a lot of us fans, we're bitter because we love this team. We don't want to see them move. But yeah, it definitely seemed like they were banging the drum for the A's. Is that your impression as well, Scott?
I think Vegas, so like they kind of represent the the zeitgeist of Las Vegas. I think. I mean, they have other agendas. They're owned by the Sheldon Adelson family, so they lean politically a certain way. But I think in the case of the A's, they kind of everybody drinks the Kool Aid when it comes to enthusiasm for professional sports here. And you could see that when the Raiders were circling. You can hear it kind of as they talk more about an NBA team. Is everybody kind of gets whipped up about it, and that's why everybody's very excited about the Vegas Golden Knights, even though hockey's like the fifth or seventh most popular sport. It doesn't matter. Vegas freaked out, right? It's a
Sure.
pro sports team. But with the A's, I don't get the vibe of any particular agenda from the Journal, but there's definitely this undercurrent of not really thinking through. Like the Review Journal doesn't really do much journalism anymore. That's the result of a lot of things. Ad revenue collapsed. There's no classified ads where that used to be
Sure.
a revenue driver for newspapers. So now they're just kind of irrelevant and don't really have the resources. I'm just one person and I bring more stories. So that kind of tells you the state of our local paper. But there were definitely a lot of forces behind pushing through this legislation, the A's, so they'd be able to come to Vegas. And it had to do with groups that most people probably wouldn't realize were exerting those forces, like our culinary union. There are a number of construction unions who are obviously very excited to have a new stadium to build. So a lot of those things happen behind the scenes. I just didn't really see it from the RJ. They definitely lean toward excitement. They definitely have been drinking the Kool Aid that the A's could actually contribute $1 billion to this project, which I don't know anybody who thinks they can
Right.
or will. They also have signed on to this idea that this legislation is now somehow binding, or that it's a done deal, which is just ridiculous. They had a binding deal for another site and just bailed on it. And I think it's a 50-50 shot. The A's even come to Vegas. I think it's if they come to Vegas, I don't even think Tropicana will be the site. It's just not. So it's a lot of smoke and mirrors, and everybody's very excited, but there's not a lot of common sense.
Yeah.
It's a long answer to a short
Oh
question,
no, it's
but
okay. Yeah, definitely. I want to hear your thoughts because you're somebody that's on the inside. I'm sitting here in a chair in the heat as well. I'm in the Central Valley of California, a couple hours from the Bay Area, and we're trying to piece together things as fans, and it's hard to know which sources are legitimate. When you are looking on things on Twitter, or you're trying to find out information about the team, and then suddenly we all put on our hats and we were Nevada legislator experts, and we were telling you guys, hey, you should vote for this, you should vote for that. And I mean, honestly, we don't know how your guys legislature works. We got an impression of it because for a moment there we thought, oh great, the bill's dead, it's not going to happen. And then, like, I think it's the very next day, Lombardo says, hey, we're going special session. And different
But
political
I
parties, but
tweeted
they
before everybody thought, all the experts were like, this is going to be a nail biter. We think that this is not going to get through. A week before that session was held, I said, this is a done deal. I tweeted it
I remember,
on that
yes.
a week before. And the reason I did that was because the things that people see are kind of the theater that's associated with decisions that are already being made. And in this case, it was already made. They had the votes. The people that were kind of expressing their displeasure with it had to do that just to cover themselves for down the road, because this is going to hit the fan. If it goes through, taxpayers are going to be on hook because all the projections were overly optimistic.
Absolutely.
Nobody read the legislation. Nobody really understood what it said, but ultimately, taxpayers are on the hook. So it was. I had heard before any of this had started happening that of course it's going to go through, but ultimately the question is, what does that mean? Because everybody's saying, well, it has to be the Tropicana site because it's in the legislation. There's other things in the legislation that mean it's a lock, it's a done. It's not. Um, there's a lot of wiggle room. There's a lot of things it's reliant upon. And I think everybody knows the Major League Baseball decision is kind of going to drag on, but it doesn't matter what they say. They're not going to say no. But I think the deal is still live with Oakland. If Oakland caves, all of this was just for nothing. And Vegas and all the media they've been having their chains yanked. If the A's move here, it probably will be, I assume it'll be at the Rio site, not the Tropicana site, but there's still a lot more drama to go. People hate that I have such good sources because I hate sports. So I don't care about any of this.
Right.
But I still get the scoop because people my sources are like, this has to get out. It has to get out that the vote's done before the vote. I'm like, I'll share it, but I don't really understand much of it. And
Sure.
then it's confirmed later, and I'm like, well, I'm sure glad I shared that because I look like a cheat.
Right, and I know you've picked up. I look at the mutual followings, and there's so many AIDS accounts that are following now, and a lot of us are. I've heard the term recently of hopium, right, where we're just hoping something goes wrong in Vegas, and I think most of us are not anti-Vegas. We just don't want to see a team that we've grown up. I'm like I was mentioning to you before we went live. I'm 43. I've rooted for this team as far as I can remember back. You hate to see it leave and not be able to take your family. It's a multi-generational thing, but like you just mentioned, you're not a big sports guy, and I believe, I don't want to put any words into your mouth, but I believe you said like you hate seeing Vegas kind of pivot from what it is and what it has been famous for into becoming, hey, now we're a sports town. How do you feel about the prospect of NBA's on the horizon, and if it's not the A's, maybe it's expansion down the road?
Yeah, I think the NBA deal is actually happening with this. It's a big project, like $10 billion south of the Strip. They have a lot of solid contacts and deals that are in the works. So I think that was happening. My overall feeling about it is Las Vegas had to pivot. I mean, that's the reality is that gambling until recently, gambling revenue was kind of flat or going down. The future was bleak because there's so much legalized gambling across the country now. Vegas used to have a monopoly, now it does. So ultimately, it had to pivot. Entertainment is a big push, but sports definitely draw a different audience than maybe would have come to Vegas before. So I totally get it. It's just not part of the part of Vegas that I came here for or that I enjoy. So I think I'm pretty much over it. I will announce my retirement on your during this interview. No, I think Yeah, it's taking up too much bandwidth in Vegas, and it's because it's not of interest to me. I can keep writing about restaurants and shows, but I think people are much more interested in this because
Sure.
there are so many sports fans. Um, but really to speak to that observation about the way Vegas works, there's there's a there are a number of reasons the A's are, they're playing Vegas like a fiddle because for so long Vegas has just had this pent up demand for sports, any kind of sports. A lot of sports fans were here and they just had no release valve for it, right? So the Vegas Golden Knights, it really helped that they were successful in their first season. It was following the October 1 shooting, so it coincided kind of as a community building team, and it was pro sports, and they were winning. Like it was very exciting. And the Raiders obviously didn't have the best reputation, but I think a lot of people thought now Vegas is like a legitimate sports town, and everybody else saw the Vegas Golden Knights revenue, and they were like, we want in on this. So then it was lacrosse. It was like a soccer team, and like every sport, like
Right.
slap wrestling or whatever they call slap fighting. So everybody jumped on board. It's just kind of shifted Vegas in a way. Just personally, if my feed is 90% sports, I'm just less interested.
Sure.
And when I bring stories related to sports, it's kind of like I'm taking it on faith of the people that are, they're in the know. They know people in the legislature. They know people in the casino community. So they're very informed. It's just a subject I don't really care that much about. But I think there's hope for Oakland to rise to the occasion. I know everybody kind of wants the team to be sold, but I think if they got their act together, which I don't know is possible with the current ownership. You know way more about this than I do. But I think if they had a better team, if the ownership changed, which would be ideal, because they're not good people. Like they're not
Right.
competent. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Everything that I've heard and seen, and I'm talking about from people who've interacted with them. I had a casino, the head of a casino that I cannot name, say that after his first meeting, the A's were trying to get all this support early on, casinos and all these business leaders. This individual, who's very smart, very powerful in Las Vegas, said kind of the equivalent of these are not serious people. And as he has observed the legislative process and all the hoopla and all the media coverage, he has literally said the words, you can never have too many imaginary ballparks. So he is fundamentally skeptical about the competence of the ownership of the A's and fundamentally skeptical that this will proceed as been presented. I think that gives great hope to folks in Oakland that like this team. I don't think it really adds much to Vegas, to be honest. The rooms are full. The projections they've made for additional visitation tours, it's just BS.
Right.
So it's an interesting time, but I would say there's a lot of optimism, and it's warranted because it's a mess here, and there's the public sentiment has shifted dramatically. The majority of people are against this team. They're not against a Major League Baseball team, but they're not fans of this particular deal, this move. The only thing some people are happy about is like knock down Tropicana, so we can get a new casino. That would be the part I'm interested in.
Right. And then I don't know that that's being maybe possibly underreported, but I've read the Tropicana employs 1,400 people. And I know the A's are trumpeting, hey, we're going to bring these jobs and it's going to benefit the unions, culinary union. But a lot of the jobs that people have at ballparks are temporary, they're seasonal, they're low paying. And I feel bad for those like longtime Tropicana employees. And I don't know that they're going to be assured that, hey, we're taking down the old Tropicana, we're going to build something new, and you're going to have a job in 2 years or 3 years or however long that project takes.
There will be some people displaced for sure, but it sounds like a bigger, better Tropicana would be better for everybody. People in Vegas that work at casinos, they're used to being flexible. because people are laid off all the time. There's these mass hirings. It's a mess. So if you're in that world, you're used to kind of disruptions. Um, there's a lot of like in the Mirage, they don't even know kind of if they will close, if they're going to do it in phases. They transition to Hard Rock Las Vegas. So I think they're used to it, and I from the rendering that I had heard about and was later shared, it's going to be like 3 hotel towers of Tropicana. Who knows what's going to happen? I think all that's moot because I don't feel like it's going to happen, and or that it's going to happen on that site.
Right.
So there's so many variables. And I get that people love talking about all this, speculating about it, but I see it online every day, and I'm like, it's good to have opinions, but it's better to have sources. That's all.
Right, absolutely.
My
And
sources are like, how are you going to build a ballpark on a space that's as big as the Bellagio Fountains? It just doesn't make sense. So that would mean Tropicana has to give them more land. That hasn't been discussed. That would mean less land for them to build their resort. It's craziness. It's on a terrible part of the strip. It would just be a traffic jam 80 times a year or whatever it is.
right.
Plus special events, and if they can even get any, it's all just silly kind of like it's stuff to talk about. I mean, I'm in the content business, so it gives me
Sure.
things to speculate about. It gives me tons of scoop because when I'm out in front of everyone saying this legislation is a done deal before the vote has even happened, then that helps me. And really, that's my first priority.
Yeah.
Is helping me, then Vegas.
I see people try to dismiss you online, and it's like this guy is right. Like you are just so dialed into these things before they happen. You said that you thought it would pass, and then I remember it was kind of like I believe it started in the state senate, then went to the state legislature, and I believe it was Jacelyn Stoltz, if I got her name right, was saying, "Oh, I'm hearing that it's like a 50-50 toss up," and you're like, "No, this deal's done." And sure enough, you're right. I mean, it ended up not even being close. I think it was 18-28 or something on the final vote there. So like you knew where it was heading.
Sports journalism for 30 years who are getting into the granular detail, all the political rank, and I get a phone call from a guy who's like, no, it's a done deal. They'll probably, they're gonna have this session so everybody can cover their. Can I say that?
Oh, you say whatever you like. Go ahead.
I'm saying, cover myself because by the time this hits the fan, they'll all be long gone. So of course they're going to vote for it. They're getting calls from the governor. They're getting calls from the culinary. If they want to keep their jobs, they have to do what these groups are saying. And I think that's probably one of the reasons that the other binding agreement failed, because the culinary union has had a long time feud with Red Rock Resorts, which is Station Casinos, and they were the owner of the other site.
Correct.
It used to be the Wild Wild West, just off the strip. That fell through. I think it's because there was pressure exerted by the culinary, which I also tweeted a month before the deal fell through.
And
I like to brag about myself constantly.
that's okay. I mean, we're here. I appreciate that you were so accommodating. I was like, hey, you think there's any shot I could get you on as a guest? And you're like, I don't really mess with Twitch. I'm a very busy man, but yeah, I'll come on your stream.
I was kidding about that.
But you are busy. Like you're.
Get a text from a good source, but no, I'm not that busy. I'm happy to talk about it because there's no denying it. It's the hot topic.
Sure.
I can give a review for Awakening or talk about Guy Fieri's new restaurant or whatever, but it just doesn't get much traction because this is people love sports. They're passionate about sports, and so if that's what they want to talk about, that's what I'm talking about too.
Absolutely. It seems that our camera feed got a little sideways. I don't know if you're able to fix it. If not, we're okay with the roll. Oh, there you are. Now you're back.
I don't know how to do all this.
Oh,
I'm
hey.
on airplane mode because I don't know.
You're doing great. And we tried to set up the Twitch feed. For anybody that's watching or watches this on the video, I went to go register Vital Vegas for our guest today because you said like you didn't really mess with Twitch. You're like, oh, I've already got it. So I tried to register. I was wondering who had it. You already had it, but for some reason it was kind of acting up. So we're using Google Meet and it's working great. So you don't
You
think?
can call me old if you
Oh,
just go. You
no.
just say it flat.
Well,
Old dudes and
y-
technology. It's
I'm
very rude,
probably
but also.
right there with you age wise because you look great. To me, I'm 43. I have just as much gray. I got the gray in the temples. So, uh, if they do end up there, I'm definitely going to come and watch a game. Maybe I can meet up with you and we can see who has the most gray. All the good stuff. Now,
I will go because I like hot dogs. I can't stand to watch sports. I went to one Vegas Golden Knights match or whatever you call them, and I went directly to the hot dog. And their hot dogs are good too, but I understand baseball's hot dogs are better, so that's why I would be there. Also to witness your exuberance for the team having moved to a new location, so you have more excuses to come to Las Vegas. That would be the only positive
now, do you
part.
think it's going to be now if they were to stay on the site, which I know you think is probably 50% or less? Do you think it's a good spot to take a family to and walk down the strip in the summer? Like, I have three little kids, they're 6, 4, and 2. Do you think families are going to descend upon the Vegas Strip, or would a better is there a better site that they could possibly end up at?
Well, I definitely hope families do not descend on Las Vegas ever. I'm anti-child in Las Vegas.
It doesn't
Um,
seem like a great fit to me, but it's not like a drag on Vegas either. It's just like Vegas, it's got the reputation, Sin City, what happens here stays here, and then here comes Dad with his baseball kids, and we're looking for Stomper and all that type of stuff. The A's mascot, and it just seems like a weird fit. But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you. Please go
no, I
ahead.
think it's fine. Vegas is safe. It's not. It's not. It does. It's not as shady as its reputation. Like a lot of families come. I'm just against it. The Vegas Golden Knights, family friendly. Raiders, mostly family friendly. Like these are kind of family friendly sporting events. And there's a lot of family friendly stuff to do in Vegas. I'm just against it. I'm mostly concerned with like their desire to be on the strip, or at least symbolically going through the motions of wanting to be on the strip, is very concerning to people who have to drive to
Absolutely.
work on the strip, like employees and other people, like taxi drivers and rideshare drivers should be very concerned because they've kind of got it handled. The Raiders Stadium is off the strip, so that mitigates a little bit. The Vegas Golden Knights or at T-Mobile, they kind of have it down, but it really is like this integration into the local casinos, their parking structures, because I have a feeling a lot of the parking for a ballpark, if it run at the Tropicana site, will be part of the plan will be casino parking because there's an MGM, there's multiple casinos around there. So then you're traipsing with your family through a casino, no biggie, right? I also think it's never a good idea to walk the strip in the summer. It's 180 degrees, and so that's why there's going to presumably be a retractable roof.
Right.
Ballpark. But so I discourage all of them. I discourage walking. I discourage because that's physical activity. I discourage walking in the summer because it's hot, and I discourage families in Las Vegas. All due respect, Disneyland is like it's in that direction,
Right.
and it's very fun, and there's no craps.
Absolutely. And then my understanding is with the orientation of this park, it's going to be towards the setting sun. I could be wrong on that, but that was my understanding. And also, like you're saying, it's supposed to be a retractable dome, not a fully closable dome, which I don't think they can build on 9 acres unless it was going to be set up like a Corvette convertible or something where it just kind of pops back onto the top of the stadium somehow. I saw some quote from the A's yesterday that said that Bally's would be willing to share 3 or 4 acres with them, but Bally's did not confirm that. So I don't know if the A's have different plans or if they're just trying to get the good PR spin out there or what the case is, but to me, the whole thing, just the more holes get poked into it, seemingly daily, I don't think it's that likely to happen, at least as the way it's spelled out right now. Not that they can't end up in Vegas, but yeah, I had a
I'm with you on that. I think it's becoming less likely. And my source said, even if it happens in Vegas, if it come to Vegas, it probably at this point won't be on the Tropicana site. So the only other real good option is Rio, mainly because they said they would give them the land for $1, which it would require another special session to get all this public supporting it, but I think it would be a done deal. And I like Rio because it's off the strip, so a lot of the traffic congestion issues would be resolved. It'd be really great for the new owners of Rio. They're going to be doing like hundreds of millions of dollars of renovations that could be happening at the same time as ballpark being built. So I don't know. I shared the Rio. It's probably 5 or 6 years ago that I shared that the Rio could be the site of a Major League Baseball stadium. So I would love if that came true, because then I would have been 5 years ahead of the expert. But
Absolutely. So I had a question from another Twitch partner. He is planning to move to Las Vegas with other streamers, and I don't know how familiar you are with Twitch and this platform, but streaming is
you're
usually
an
live,
expert.
interacting with the viewers. You're expert, and so they want to get like a streamer house where they're all gonna live in it, stream constantly, probably go to the strip, go do things, have their adventures, do IRL content as well. And my question for you is, would they be better off living in one of the like the suburbs around Las Vegas for affordability? They would probably need really good internet connection. Do you have any recommendations for that young man? His name's Marky Next Door.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what all the considerations would be. There are places you can get on or near the strip, which is where most of the content is. I live in far west, so about 20 minutes in Vegas. It's far 20 minutes west. It's nicer, and there's still decent values in, like, if you're gonna rent a home or whatever. It's kind of like the Airbnb question. Like, if it's an Airbnb, why would you go closer to the strip? It's crazy when you can find one 5 minutes away, 10 minutes away, and everything is close in Vegas. So I don't know. My personal thought would be get a beautiful, you know, rent a home where you have space and nice living conditions, and you're still very close. You're a $20 Uber ride to the strip or downtown, which is where all the content's going to come from. My best advice for those folks would be, beyond where they're going to stay, is get familiar with downtown, because when you first come to town, you can kind of get dazzled by the strip, but it's two big companies, and they're not, I don't know, they're not doing much all that interesting right now. But downtown is very vibrant, and it's grittier. There's better value. There's a lot more people watching, a lot more interesting people watching. So that's my take on it. But everyone is welcome. Content creators in Vegas do quite well, many of them. As long as they're doing it for the right reason. I give workshops for bloggers. My thing is, like, if you're coming for the wrong reason, if you're trying to make money or make a splash, it's probably not a great place to come. But if you're coming here because you love the the vibe of the town, or what it's about, or the energy of it, and you're doing it because you're passionate about it, it's a great place to be, because there's so much stimulation. There's something new every day. Restaurants, shows. There's always something to talk about. So that's what I mean. I just lay in my hammock. Vegas does all the legwork, and I just do a tweet or a blog post about it, and I get paid an ungodly amount of money to do it.
And if anybody listening wants to connect with you, besides following on your Twitter account, which is Vital Vegas, and then at casino.org slash Vital Vegas, how would they, like, if somebody wants to sign up for the class to learn from you, to run their blog, can they just contact through there? Do they message you?
No,
Um,
I prefer if I'm never contacted by anyone. No, I
so I'm already on the bad list here.
no, I'm trying to retire. So, but anyway, no, yeah, that's the best way to do it. It's Scott@vitalvegas.com. Twitter DM is fine too. That's @vitalvegas. And I'll be courteous, but say it on time. I'm very important, because after I lay in the hammock, I have to feed the hummingbirds. I have to fill up that feeder every 2 days because it's so hot. I'm a responsible hummingbird feeder.
I,
But no, I'm always, I always figure that anything I can do to help. I mean, my situation is weird. It doesn't exist in the world that I'm familiar with. I did this as a hobby, and luckily I was just doing it about a subject that became valuable to, casino.org has a news component. Um, and so rather than just folding me in as a writer, you're like, well, we like this brand. What? Just keep doing what you do and we'll pay you for it. And they also like the Vital Vegas brand, so they got the brand. So I'm pretty much an independent contractor. It's their thing. I'm just the guy who's keeping it going, and I get a chunk of money, and I'm really happy to be doing my hobby as a job. But that it doesn't really happen in the real world. Um, Even though people are saying like, well, of course it happens. It happened to you. I'm like, well, yeah, but it wasn't intentional. I was just doing something I was passionate about because I like attention. And
sure.
just, I write jokes and they're about Vegas. That's my thing. But yeah, it's I get a lot of people have an idea of what as you know, content creation, what it's about, what can happen because it can blow up. It can be, it's an interesting discussion in Vegas because there's a lot of influencers who are flooding into Vegas who see folks that are doing really well doing it. And there's a few accounts that are really popular, very influential. Keith Lee is based in Vegas. He does the food stuff. There's Vegas Starfish. These are folks that are making a living, like Travel Ruby. Like they make a living doing Vegas content now. But there are others like Las Vegas Locally. He has this massive Twitter following, but you can't monetize Twitter. So
Right.
it's a mixed bag of people doing it for the right reason, the wrong reason. But I do try to help because there are definite pitfalls. There are things that are very Vegas specific. I think everybody would agree that news and breaking news is probably the hardest form of content. Just because it's every day and it never stops. And so, but there's reviews and building an audience. I always try to help people because I figure it adds to the conversation. It's not taking anything away from me, and it adds to the flavors of Vegas because everybody's going to have their take. They're going to have a different way of presenting the information. So whether they're a vlogger or a blogger or they're on TikTok or whatever they're doing, I try to be supportive. The only people that I don't tend to interact with or help are kind of on the troll side where they're overly negative. They're attacking people. I attack the art because they're terrible. The Review Journal. But other than that, I try not to
Sure.
attack people. I'm trying to make Vegas fun. And being negative and critical all the time is just not. It's not that fun. And the other folks I avoid are the ones who are taking money and not disclosing it to their fans or their followers. So that's becoming more prevalent, unfortunately. So those folks, I don't know what to do with. But anybody who has an interest in adding to the conversation, contributing to the conversation about Vegas, I'm always happy to help.
Absolutely. And I didn't realize that you guys had hummingbirds. I mean, I think they're throughout most of the continental 48 states. Well, it's just ignorance on my part, but I recently just put up 6 hummingbird feeders so the kids and I can go out in the backyard and check them out. And I didn't realize, like you just said, you need to pull those things down and clean them like every 2 days because we have the heat here where I'm at. We're supposed to get up to 109 this Saturday. So,
Oh my goodness.
yeah,
Probably with humidity. Well, I don't know what California, but yeah, it can actually stuff can grow and it'll hurt the hummingbird. So I try to do it more frequently. So I actually got a smaller one. So it's more work for me, but they seem to like the frat. I actually have one hummingbird that will, if the feeder is empty, if I'm in the hammock, she'll come and like hover by my face.
like, come on, get up.
It's crazy.
It's crazy how smart animals are, and you wouldn't think of like a little tiny bird like having that real relation, like, hey, this guy's going to get me some food if I go and just make sure he knows that I'm ready for it. That's very
She
cool.
wakes me up from a nap. She's done it twice, and I still love her because she's so cute. And then the other male, you can tell the males because they've red and purple on their necks. They'll try to they'll try to bully her. So now I've actually started standing with a blanket. If she's feeding, I hold up the blanket so the boys can't scare her away. I think it's rude.
Yeah, let her have her nectar, and then you guys can
Right?
eat, right? Yeah,
There's enough for everybody.
sure. So I know today we saw, and I saw you tweeting about it. Uh, I believe it's the NSEA, the Nevada. I forgot what the acronym is for, but there's going to be like a schools over stadiums possible ballot measure referendum. Do you think it
Yeah.
even gets to that point, or do you think this thing maybe comes off the tracks before it ends up in the hands of the voters, if they can get the funding and the signatures? I think they need 112,000 signatures over the 4 districts to get it on the ballot.
I mean, it's good-hearted, but it's stuff like that is just it's in Las Vegas. Like the ugly truth of Vegas is you don't need an educated workforce. So the lobbies behind the casinos are never going to push for more education. They don't want it. They don't. That's all due respect to people in this industry, right? Because they are smart at what they do. But you can come out of high school and get a job as or at least used to valet, bartender, whatever, make $150,000 a year. Well, it's 100,000 after you gamble, but it's a
Sure.
significant amount of income with no additional education. You don't even have to finish high school. So the idea of Nevada is suddenly making education a priority at the expense of other things is just they're always going to pick sports over education. And I think one of the pieces of legislation actually said it was going to be like $2 billion more for education in Nevada, which is awesome. But you're having to make we're 49th or 50th in every educational ranking. It's painful. It's not part of the glitzy part of Vegas, but there are people who live here, and there are people who are going to have to stay here because they can't get a job at a tech company. They can't go to other places, so they're going to get those jobs you're talking about. They're going to work at a concession stand at a baseball stadium. And it's sad to watch, but I don't think it's going to have any effect on the A's situation at all because I don't think the NBA team is going to ask for public money. I think this is the last case of a major pro sport asking for money from the public. It's not a ton of money. I'm not thrilled that there's any public money going toward it, but whatever it ends up being, 300 million, 500 million. We got a baseball team if it goes through. But
Sure.
it's hard to get too worked up about anything that's 50-50. Like at this point, I don't think it's going to sway. It's going to tip any scales one way or the other. But I think it's a noble attempt to raise awareness about education because
Sure.
it's never been a priority in Nevada,
And
and I don't expect it to be honest.
what about the folks like up north in like Tahoe, Sparks, wherever it may be, that are going to be, their tax dollars are going to go towards this project if it's to go through. But they're not really going to see much of a direct benefit because it seems like at least Jeremy Aguero, the applied analysis guy. I think if I have his name and company right, they're talking all the benefits to Clark County, but there's a lot of other counties in the state too that are going to be having some of their public funds at least going towards the athletics. Do you feel like they're just getting the raw end of the deal, or that's just the nature of the state?
Everybody's getting the raw end of the deal. Those numbers and those benefits are made up. They are pulled out of a human being's butt, and they have no basis in reality. They have no reasonable expectation of actually coming true. So it's the folks that are going to be most on the hook are in Clark County. But you're right. If Nevada taxpayers ultimately end up subsidizing a billionaire who's not going to contribute a dollar of his money because nobody knows where he's getting $1 billion, but he's not contributing it.
Right.
Everybody's taking it in an unpleasant fashion. Let's put it that way. It's not, and these alleged benefits. I mean, it's been documented over and over how using public money for a sports venue contributes nothing to the community in the long run, because you have to factor in what it's taking money away from. It's taking money away from infrastructure, education, medical system. All those things cumulatively will pay off in the long run. So you have to do that math. It can't just be you've got, you know, 1,000 extra construction jobs for a year, and that's the benefit to the community. That's not it. It's you're subsidizing billionaires. There's no way to get around it though.
And I know when the bill was in special session, some of the legislature was very proud of themselves for getting the A's to acquiesce and go up to $2 million per year for community benefits. Do you do you anticipate that helping like the youth? Or I know there's some talk about homelessness. And I don't mean to make any light of homelessness anywhere, but
I
it sounded like they were not going to actually ever
I
fund it. It's just kind of like a pie in the sky. Oh, after all these other things are paid, then we'll throw you guys a few bucks, to help out with the
No, I'm
situation.
sure it's fine, but it's all PR. It's all posturing. It's all BS. Like if you know Vegas politics, if you know how things work, it's the same reason those legislators were sitting there railing against this project for hours and then voted for it, because it's just BS. It's
Right.
hypocrisy, and it's diverting attention. So helping this community contribution, the Ace, they don't plan to do anything. If this thing doesn't move forward, they could contribute $1 billion a year to homelessness. It doesn't make any difference, because it's all just a dog and pony show.
Right.
They needed a bargaining chip to go back to Oakland, and everybody's like, the deal is dead, Oakland. I'm like, they're on the phone right now. The deal is dead with the LA with the Las Vegas Festival grounds. No, they're on the phone with Phil Ruffin right now. The deal's not dead with Rio. They're on the phone with him right now. Like, it's frustrating to watch, because I call out BS about everything, but there's so much more BS to call out in this story. Than it's the it's one of the wackiest stories in Vegas history, of people just being jerked around, people being gullible, and being kind of hypnotized by pro sports.
Right.
Like they recognize the team name, so suddenly they walk into the room, and this guy, this consultant you're talking about, everybody agrees is just making up numbers to make it sound like, hey, this is a new tax district. Think about all the new taxes. It's going to pay for itself. That's the
Right.
that's the argument. It's going to pay for itself. It's not going to pay for itself. There's not going to be a full house for 80 games. When was
Absolutely
the
not.
last time there was a full house for an A's game? I know nothing about the A's. The last time there was a full house was when everybody came to protest
Right,
that the
right. I
team
was there
wasn't
for that
being
night. Yeah.
sold.
Yeah, I mean, they don't sell out. They're terrible, unfortunately. And I mean, I love the franchise back in the '80s when they were good, and I just stuck with them. But
I know
yesterday
it's
was a
it's like an emotional connection. I grew up when I was a kid. I lived in San Diego. I never went to a Chargers game, but I had a Chargers helmet in my little baby football league, or whatever it's called. And I've always had a connection to the Chargers. I've never seen a game. Don't have any idea who's on the team, so I get the emotional connection. And I sincerely hope that you get to keep your team. And I sincerely hope that the ownership will step over, because everybody's calling them jerks. And I've just heard horrible things about everybody involved, that they're not serious people. They don't have their act together. They're trying to bamboozle Vegas. It's a consistent message. So I'm so sorry that your sports team has been corrupted by these folks.
and that's I think that's just the nature of sports too. I mean, it's billionaires benefiting themselves wherever they can with taxpayer dollars if they can get it, from public funding. And like you said, there's a lot of economists that have spoken out about this possible deal. Also, I believe Buffalo Bills are getting a new stadium. Tennessee Titans in the NFL are supposed to be getting a new stadium. I'm seeing these economists saying basically the money that gets spent going to the games is money that would have been spent going to a play, would have been spent somewhere else in the community where it doesn't become new dollars that are coming in. Nobody's traveling out to Vegas or to Oakland. if you're a Kansas City Royals fan or a Miami Marlins fan, you're not flying across your country to come watch them play out here, out there, anywhere. Because I mean, the A's aren't that particularly special of a team, and those are small fan bases. I don't see the projection of them drawing 28,000 per game is I think the number that they're trying to cling to. I've heard that the pro uh I think I'm getting the name of it wrong, but the big rodeo that comes out yearly out that way.
PBR,
Yeah,
yeah.
the PBR was supposed to maybe
It's
relocate
something.
there. To me, that seems kind of crazy because you guys already have that event. That's not like a new event and new revenue coming in. That's just something that I saw them trying to say, oh, we could host this, we could host the All-Star game, we could host Major League Soccer and all these different things, which is like, does anybody really want to come to a 30,000 seat stadium? So I definitely think it's dubious at best. Could you give me, if it's okay to shift gears a little bit, if I was to come for the first time, I've never been there. My wife was there when her brother got married. What would be a fun, like, leave the kids at home with the in-laws, with the grandparents, and like, what would you recommend to go see, go stay? Is there something that you think is just like the cool thing to do as a first timer going for a weekend type of deal?
Yeah, I mean, once you have the kids out of the picture, you can do kind of more of the Vegas stuff that adults should be doing, and that's kind of drinking, gambling, cavorting. Um, there's a lot of like a topless review. It's actually classy. It's not a strip club. Like I think for a couple, that's fun. If you're a couple um, who they want to do something a little saucier. I think there's all the traditional things that you have to do, which you have to go see the Bellagio fountains and the Bellagio Conservatory. You have to go downtown to see the Fremont Street Experience because it's wild. There's always something new, but if you're not all that familiar with the town, everything's new, right? So
Sure.
you want to see a surf show to see kind of that spectacle. You want to go to the top of the stratosphere and see that view. Maybe have dinner up there with a revolving restaurant. I definitely want to see Circa. That's the newest casino downtown. It's more like a strip casino, but it's right in the middle of the action downtown, and everything is close downtown, so you can bop around to all those different casinos. Shows would be like Absinthe. That's an adult oriented kind of circus style show. It's gritty, it's funny, it's raunchy, and they also do Atomic Saloon. They do OPM at Cosmopolitan. Used to be called Opium, but they had some trouble advertising that,
Sure.
so it's OPM now. I highly recommend the Mega Mart, which is at Area 15, which is like this kind of interesting mall. But that's kind of a fun, kind of intellectual thing to do for a few hours. The museums are fun. The Neon Museum, the Mom Museum are really, really interesting, fun, Vegas specific kind of things to do. There's thrill ride stuff, depending on what you're into, but really the casinos and the lounges, that's my world. So they're everywhere. There are so many good ones. A good steakhouse in Vegas, like to go, it's better than anything you have in your hometown. And
Sure.
that's not specific to you, that's anybody's hometown.
Right, right.
Even if you're in freaking LA or New York, it's better. So to hit um, and they're in the weirdest places. Like there's a great steakhouse in Circus Circus, which is just a menagerie of kids and families. Great steakhouse. Then there's Joe's at the Forum Shops. And there's just an endless list of great restaurants. Whatever kind of cuisine, you probably will find one of the best restaurants in the world. For that cuisine, you can do high end fancy. You go to the Eiffel Tower restaurant at Paris. It's beautiful view. Everything's just sexy. But those are the things you have to hit. You have to hit some shows. You have to have a nice dinner. You go to a swingers club. How adventurous are you feeling? There's a green door. That's wild. I did a walkthrough for my podcast. It was eye opening. But it's like the cliche is kind of true. It's kind of like when you're in Vegas, you do things you wouldn't normally do or think of doing that maybe are illegal in your hometown. Like weed is legal here now. People are into that. You do that. Whatever you want to do. It's most of it's legal. Prostitution is not. So if you have an escort, don't be discreet about it. Because everybody has to have a threesome in Vegas at some point, except me. I'm having trouble having them once. But yeah, but that covers a lot of ground, right?
Absolutely.
Uh,
And then what if you are like the family that ends up at the Raiders game or the Golden Knights game? Is there like a family recommendation middle of the day, little like kid amusement park or anything that's decent, or is that just not the experience there?
no, all the casinos, a lot of them have arcades, so that's always fun. Circus has a Circus Midway with free circus acts and tons of carnival style games. Circus is probably the go-to for families. People don't speak highly of it, but I like it as an adult, and families love it because the food's cheap and there's a lot of atmosphere, and the gambling's pretty good. So yeah, Circus is probably it on the casino side. But that Area 15 has a lot of family friendly stuff in it. Beyond Omega Mart, they have interactive VR stuff and kind of stuff I don't understand. So that's a fun place to go to. If they like thrill rides, the top of the stratosphere is still making money hand over fist, but it's crazy scary. I wouldn't even
Okay.
go up there. It's nuts.
And then is anything being built that you're excited for? That's like right on the horizon, something to come and see. Like if you've been there recently, but like, hey, this is going to be the new thing in the next couple of months or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, probably the biggest one is going to be Fontainebleau, which is a hotel that started being built like 15 years ago, and it stalled during the economic crisis, and it's going to open by the end of the year. It's a massive, massive resort. There's a lot of questions about how it's going to do, but I don't think there's anybody questioning whether it's going to be an amazing thing, and it's amazing that it was finished. So that one is on the horizon. The other one would be the MSG Sphere. A lot of people are looking forward to that. I think it's going to have some financial troubles. It already has, but it's just a giant kind of IMAX theater where U2 is going to perform 20 plus shows, and then they're going to show original movies for $50 a pop. Uh, I think everybody's just excited to see what it is or what it looks like. Tomorrow, I think, the Win is reopening its show Awakening, which is like this $150 million production show that had some trouble, so they closed it down for a few months and just totally revamped the whole thing. So that's a big one that's on the horizon too. A lot of things have been announced that will never happen. So I tend not to get excited about those because they're full of it. There's supposed to be a spaceport. There's supposed to be like there's an AllNet arena which is fully financed every 6 months, and it's still dirt. So those are fun ones to watch. But yeah, I think Fontainebleau is kind of the one that everybody's watching with a lot of curiosity. There's a local place called Durango, so those two casinos will be opening, and everybody's kind of watching to see if we've got enough demand for the supply.
And then with your expertise and with your blog and the Twitter feed, you tend to be there as soon as these open. Correct, Scott? Like if people want to check it out before they make the trip, they can get the review from checking out your blog and your Twitter feed uh,
Yeah, I
anytime.
usually try to go, within the first for a casino opening. I usually go the day of, but for a restaurant, I like to give them a little time before I make a decision. So if they got a couple weeks in, I usually wait because I think of it as a soft opening because I don't want to go in and trash the place because they were having an off night because it just
Sure.
opened. But yeah, that's the place to find it, and I usually go pretty quickly, and then I'll just show up at a show that's been open a year and a half, and I forgot to go, like Mad Apple in New York, like a really good show. I had heard it was good. I just never gone before, and it turns out it's really good. Highly recommended.
Awesome. I feel like we've covered a lot of ground. One question I always like to ask whenever I have anybody on, is there any questions that you wish I would have asked you today, or anything that you would like to talk about or plug?
Yeah, nothing to plug. I mean, I'm kind of in an interesting spot because I don't have anything to promote. I'm not ambitious. I don't have anything new coming up. But I sometimes like there are stories that are strange and fascinating that are kind of like glossed over by the traditional media. So those are usually the ones that I have fun talking about because there's just things that the general public doesn't know. It's never reported. It's usually reported after I share it first. They'll go and confirm it or find out more details. But those are the ones that they're more obscure and they may not even they might not catch anybody's attention. But I love talking about like this story that just happened. Circa they had $1.2 million stolen, and the employee brought the thieves the money.
Oh
So
wow.
that was the story that broke. Our local TV station broke it, KLAS, I think. And so I didn't see that arrest report, but they broke the story because they saw that arrest report. So then I started poking around, and I found out that this actually happened at 5 casinos. That these con men. It's the crime is very organized, I should say. I don't want to get killed, but it's an organized, kind of very sophisticated process of targeting these folks in casino cages and getting them to making them think it's the owner of the casino or high ranking executive, telling them that they need this cash for an emergency situation, and the employee brings the money to the thieves. And they're not really bringing it to the thieves; they're bringing it to some 23-year-old kid who's just like, "Sure, I'll take the money and give it to you for give me money, pay me pay me something, and I'll do it."
Right.
So this guy they've arrested, everybody's saying it's like he's the mastermind. He's like a dopey kid. He's like a delivery truck driver or whatever. I don't know. That's an exclusive. I don't think anybody shared that either. But anyway, so they target these women. They're always women, 40s and 50s, in these casino cages where they're they're excited to help, right? I want to help my boss, who I think I'm talking to. I want to help this casino save its gaming license. I want to help save jobs. So the criminals exploit these people. Then they insulate themselves because the person she's bringing the money to is just some low level, small fish. But like the fact that 5 casinos with the best security in the world can be duped, and even more interesting to me is the fact that it hasn't been reported. Like I reported this 2 days ago, and it still hasn't been reported. It's astonishing to me that there's this like cone of silence, and there's just people don't have good sources. I guess I don't know, but it's a huge story. So those are the ones I like talking about, where it's kind of like, there's the surface story, $1.2 million stolen by a guy impersonating the casino owner. That's not the story at all, because everybody assumed it was a different owner. Everybody assumed it was Derek Stevens. He's very visible face of Circa, this downtown casino that I mentioned. But it was his brother they were impersonating because he's not flashy, so he'd be easier to impersonate, right? So
Right.
it
Right.
makes more sense, but only if you know the lay of the land. And you also know that a criminal mastermind is not going to be let go on bail of $25,000 after they've stolen 1.2 million. That's just
Absolutely.
insane. It's just this guy doesn't know anything. So anybody who thinks the case is solved, and I keep getting asked who the casinos were, and I know them, but I can't. I don't want I don't want to be killed. So I don't want the criminals to think I know more than I do, and I don't want anybody in the casino industry to kill me because they obviously don't want these stories out there because they don't want to look stupid.
Right. Right.
The only reason Circa's out there is somebody was arrested, and the other ones they got away with it for millions of dollars, and it still has not been reported. So that's a long, long answer to a short question. But those are the stories I love because it might be inside baseball, but I think it's fascinating. Like I was on CNBC last night, and it's because these cons happen in banks, restaurant. Like this is a national problem. It's an international problem.
I saw that you were on. I was like, man, you're going from CNBC to hanging out with me. Like that's a pretty huge difference as far as the reach. And I thought like this is very very nice of you to make some time to hang out with us. And the
Well,
stories,
it had to do with because with them I had to put on a collared shirt. you wouldn't be judgmental.
Absolutely not. Hey, we got the T-shirt, and we're ready
Stardust,
to
dude.
go. Stardust. But the story's great. Like it almost feels like something you could make a movie based off of the story. And I know there's probably lots of stories like that. I also saw you recently tweeting about, did Charles Manson actually stop with, the family as they were called in Vegas before heading out to commit some of the crimes? And that's not something I ever would have known about without checking out your feed. And that's another reason everybody that I hope is watching now or will watch once we upload to YouTube will drop a follow on all your social and keep tabs on these stories that you're breaking for everybody. Is there any stories that have happened that, looking back on it, you still can't believe, like how ridiculous it was? I mean, besides like the Oakland A's, I know we've kind of torn them down for all the stuff that they're doing, but is there one that just like puts a smile on your face that you've seen, in the last few years since you've been maybe working for the casino.org, or even before you went to blogging for them?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you want to go way back, there's one that will never be matched. Um, so a number of years ago, I don't know if folks are familiar with high roller Ferris wheel, observation wheel here in Vegas. A couple was arrested. They were arrested because they were attempting to perform sexual acts on the high roller. Okay, simple story, right? Yeah, it's the usual thing where like the local media covers it. They didn't really dig in. So the reason I was dragged into it was because a year before they were arrested, I wrote a story about how to have sex on the high roller.
You wrote
So
the
I
how
spelled
to.
out all the steps. It was like just common sense. Like, it's still indecent exposure if you're in the air because people can see you. So bring a blanket. Tip one of the attendants so you can get your own. There's like these little pods, right? Like tip the. I gave practical tips. So they got arrested. Everybody thought it was for being sexually involved, but the truth was they were stopped because they were smoking. It wasn't about the sexual acts. They were a fire hazard. That's why they were arrested. So they get arrested, and the story immediately became more interesting when it was learned that the guy was to get married. He was in Vegas to get married, but not to the woman that he was with on the high road.
Oh
So
no.
that was the first real twist. The second twist, well, now horror. This went. So it was funny for a while, right? This is fun. So then we learned that the guy works in that the woman that he married worked in a strip club. So he apparently had some associate. He was in the strip club, and after this incident, had gone on like a daytime TV show and been paid $4,000 for his appearance. He goes to her strip club and shows off his 4 grand. He is he's whacked. He gets
Oh,
the money stolen, and the robbers kill him.
oh
So
no.
the horrible twist to an otherwise truly hilarious story. It just took so many twists and so many turns. And I'm not even saying all the twists and turns. I think it might have been his bride to be who bailed him out of jail when he was arrested with this other woman. So it had layers of everything. The Review Journal, the one time they gave me credit for anything, they actually included part of my article about how to have sex. I was like, wow, you just put that in the Review Journal, huh? Okay, no copycats out of that. That was kind of far and away the wackiest one that I've ever had scoop on, because I started digging and got into all these juicy details. And it ended badly, so it's hard to tell the story kind of in a lighthearted way. But
Sure.
I think enough time that it can still be seen as like, oh my goodness, that's pretty Vegas. That's a pretty Vegas story for a number of reasons.
Lot of things that happen in that chain of events, right, for him to end up leading, unfortunately, to his demise there at the end. Um, So I don't know if there's anything else you would like to get into. I always feel like there's something else I meant to ask, and then I think about it when I'm laying down, like an hour later, like, hey, I should have asked this or that. But any other thoughts on the A's? Anything else that you'd like to share with us today, Scott?
No, I just appreciate the time to chat, and I've just continued to be fascinated with Vegas. I appreciate for a lot of people, they don't really watch Vegas that closely until it's specifically something they have interest in, whether it's a sports team or some kind of scandal or something. It's kind of like, but I always appreciate just that Vegas is being talked about. I have no vested interest. I don't, I don't make money based on if people go to my blog or not. I'm not going to make money either way. I'm going to make money, earn my keep. But
Sure.
I just appreciate a chance to share some stuff going on and appreciate the interest a lot.
Yeah, A's fans are we're definitely very interested in everything that you have to say, with regards to the possible relocation. But it's sparked a lot of thought, at least for myself, and I'm guessing throughout our collective fan base, like, hey, there's a lot going on out in Vegas, and I'm asking you, like, hey, what should I do if I go with my wife? What should I do if I go with my family? And hopefully people will realize there is a lot to do and there are a lot of things to see, regardless if the A's end up there or not, right? And that's 2028, and that's according to their timeline, which I wouldn't, even if it does happen where they say it's going to happen, I wouldn't expect it to be done by then personally. But I might find myself going out to a vacation, and now I know some places to go and some things to do thanks to you. And I really appreciate your feed. You're always very humorous. You interact with all of us if we have a few followers or we have a lot of followers there on Twitter. So I think it's awesome, and I have sort of a similar deal where I have a lot of passion for sports and gaming, and I started streaming because my son was born. I couldn't sleep, and I couldn't recommend this to anybody else. Like, hey, be a stay-at-home dad and do Twitch all day. But you've ended up in this position where you have this passion for Vegas, for breaking the stories, for having the scoops, and I just think it's awesome. So I greatly appreciate your time. And would you like to have any final words for any listeners?
No, I just appreciate it. I was forced to download Twitch, and I have to learn how to use it. Whatever. Um, yeah, it's just it's refreshing to hear how other people look at Vegas or see Vegas, because I've been doing it so long. It's easy to get a little bit jaded.
Sure.
So it's always fun to hear that folks are like, what do I do if I'm bringing somebody for the first time, or what if it's my first time, or what am I? Because for the folks that haven't visited Las Vegas, they have a definite preconceived notion of what it is, and a lot of those things are true. But the reason they don't visit is because they might think, I'm not into gambling, or I'm not into whatever. I'm not into strip clubs, or
Right.
But there's always something else, and it's always Vegas-ified. Like whatever it is, it's a show. You might have seen this show somewhere else, but it's Vegas-ified. It's we do a twist or something over the top or crazy that makes it different. And Vegas can be tacky and cheesy and cliched and kind of embarrassing and cringeworthy at times, but that's what I love about it. Like, give me something cheesy and tacky once in a while. And I've been doing it for at least writing about it for 10 years. So thanks for the chance to talk about it.
Absolutely,
Do it again.
sir. Absolutely, yeah. We'll have to bug you in the winter and say, like, hey, where are the A's at right now? And ask for the inside scoops from you. Thanks so much, Scott. I appreciate your time.
How do I turn this thing off? Just an internet. How do I turn this
there,
off?
there should be like a little red button, I think.
I'm just kidding.
You got.
Don't have to mention what he talked.
All right, that was Vital Vegas, and greatly appreciate Scott coming on today, and all of you guys for tuning in. I know it's a slightly different format. I am going to end call as well and see who's on for a raid, and get you guys rated over there. Tomorrow we'll be back to playing some MLB The Show and talking about all the things that we talked about today. One thing that we got to avoid talking about was the A's getting a perfect game thrown against them yesterday, man. It's been a painful year. The team's trying to relocate. And we had our longtime play-by-play announcer. Either he had a slip or he said something racist. It's still kind of up for debate, but Glenn Kuiper was fired this year. We're the worst team in baseball. And then there was a perfect game hurled against us by a player that has been suspended for domestic abuse and for cheating. So I just wish it could have been anybody else that would have thrown a perfect game at the Coliseum. But at least that was, until yesterday, the longest streak in Major League Baseball of not being no hit. It had gone back to 1991. But I see Brenton TV is on. He loves baseball. We love baseball. And we'll take you guys to Brenton. Let me put in Vital Vegas's command again in case you guys didn't follow him. I always pull up this page right here. Stay low. Used to be one of the first guys that would watch me a long time ago, and I just realized that he's never on anymore. So I can pull it up and see who's in my follow without playing something off the front page that we'd like to avoid. But I appreciate everybody. Thank you guys. Please check out Brenton, and I'll see you in the morning, maybe in the late night for some demon hours. Just depends how we're feeling. But yeah, appreciate everybody checking out the stream. I'll get it uploaded as well. Thank you, Carne, and I saw Josh, Brado's Coffee Time. I see Snowman Gaming, Christine. Thank you everybody that tuned in. I know it's a little different format to go just chatting, but obviously he has a lot to say, and